Old school HBO at the dog.
Hi, welcome to TTFT. This is Royce Freeman, and I'm here with
Don May of Synapse Films.
anybody who has been watching classic restored genre titles over the last several decades. There's a good chance that it is passed through your fingertips.
You know, back when I started in 92, 91, film restoration was a real art because there were no real computers. We had to do everything photochemically. So we would take negatives, we would clean them, we would, reprint them, make elements to run through machines so that you could get your video transfers, whether it be VHS, Laserdisc, or whatever. And then everything was done with chemicals, what they call wet gating, that actually fills in scratches and hides dirt. To now, 30 years later, the restoration, as it were. The old school guys hate that word, like Robert Harris. You might know him from restoring Lawrence of Arabia, My Fair Lady. When you use the word 4K restoration, he gets kind of bent out of shape about it because you're really just nowadays you're just scanning something into a computer. You're cleaning it and coloring it and doing everything in a computer and then spitting it back out. So the old school restoration guys that were doing everything with handling the actual film, running it through the printers, checking the color, checking the splices, making sure everything was done, photochemically as opposed to being on a computer. So I kind of do that. I've lived through it all. I've been in the business since the Laserdisc days, the tail end of VHS, DVD, Blu-ray, and now 4K UHD and streaming. I take genre films and some other films depending on the titles, but mostly horror genre. I clean them up and present them on home video under our own label, Synapse Films now.
So that is a very specific field to get into, and it's not something that I think that when we're all kids playing with our Tonka trucks and our playing pretend with our friends, that it's like, I want to restore movies when I get older.
Yeah.
How did you get into that field?
Well, when I went to Illinois State, and I got a degree in broadcasting. I always loved movies ever since I was a little kid. I mean, horror movies were my thing. In the 80s when I was in high school and VHS was around, I mean, I guess it still is around, but when VHS was sort of new and everybody was doing, God forbid, everybody was doing video trading, and you'd get all these movies from, Your List Gets Mine, that was in the back of the Fango magazines, video traders wanted. So I've always been a fan of horror and sci-fi. And when I went to college, I kind of wanted to be in the broadcasting industry in some way. But I learned television, radio, worked on local TV shows, cable access shows, did commercials, cut radio spots. And then by the time I was ready to graduate, I was like, well, this broadcasting degree is great, but I don't want to be a newscaster. I don't want to be a weatherman. I don't want to do radio. I don't have a voice for it, And so after college, I started working at a Laserdisc store in Bloomington, Illinois called Laser's Edge. And Laserdisc was like this amazing format. It was so much better than VHS. And I, spent hundreds, if not thousands of dollars buying Laserdiscs and whatnot. And one of my distributors where I would buy for the store was also a horror fan. And we were talking one day about Night of the Living Dead and how we liked it. It's one of our favorite movies, but it was never treated with respect. It was always one of those tapes that you'd find at Kmart in the VHS bin for, $2 from some fly-by-night video company that just took a print and put it on VHS and just said, hey, and it was never treated with respect. It never looked good. And worse than that, George and all those people that made it never really made any money from it because of the whole copyright mistake or whatever happened. I mean, I kind of know what happened, but it just, they never got any compensation for the movie, so it was just kind of lost in limbo for them. So I thought, well, maybe we should do this. At the time, Criterion was doing laser discs of things like Blade Runner, and they did Invasion of the Body Snatchers and King Kong and stuff like that. And I thought, well, why don't we do Night of the Living Dead? And keep in mind that neither one of us knew how to make a laser disc. We just had the idea. And he goes, yeah, that sounds like, let's do it. And so we just kind of did it. We called George, who was in the white pages of the Pittsburgh phone book at the time. I was like, wait, George Romero isn't, oh my God. Well, we called him and we told him what we wanted to do, and he was very receptive to the idea. And we came up with a number, and he said, listen, you give us this much money and we'll give you the keys to the kingdom, let you do whatever the hell you want. And at that point we were just like, oh shit, he actually wants to do this. You have this idea of how great it would be to do something like this, and then you never, in the back of your mind, you never really think it's ever going to happen. You're like, yeah, this is a pipe dream, but it doesn't, you don't ask, you don't get. Let's ask, and then get turned down and say, yeah, we talked to George Romero today on the phone, and yeah, it was great. And then he said yes. And we're like, uh-oh, I guess we have to figure out how to make a laser disc now. So we went to Pittsburgh, and we had a meeting at a hotel across the street from the Monroeville Mall, of all places. And everybody from Night of the Living Dead that was alive at the time was pretty much there. And we had to come up with a presentation, and we had to say, okay, we're going to do this, and this is what we're going to do, and this is what we're going to do, and this is what we're going to do. And they said, yeah, sure. Where's our money? We're like, okay. And we just did it. And it took us another year, because I think we started in 91. It took us a year and maybe a little bit more than that to get through everything. The material for Night of the Living Dead, the original negative and everything that, the audio and everything, was at a place in Pittsburgh at the time called WRS Studios, which had been there for decades. WRS is now closed and turned into like a pseudo movie studio. They actually shot that Carrie Fisher remake, Sorority Row, inside that building. Everything, like the inside of the sorority, was made inside WRS. But they were a big lab. They had negatives for tons of MGM material, and Night of the Living Dead was there. So we went and we worked with them. The people that had worked on Night of the Living Dead in 1968, some of them were still there. It was crazy that they were still there, 20 some odd years later. And we just did it. We called THX Laserdisc program. They agreed to help us. We came out and did the whole thing. And it was this, we thought, okay, first George is never going to want to do this. And then he did. And then we thought, okay, we're going to do this Laserdisc and we're never going to do anything else. And we're going to put this thing out, and then we're going to go back to our shitty jobs. It's going to be the one thing that we do, and then we're never going to do anything again. And here it is 32 years later, and I'm still doing it.
So how do you go from Night of the Living Dead to where we are now? Like, what was the next step after Night of the Living Dead to get the ball rolling?
Well, so we had this concept of the double disc set with the extras and the gatefold, and we got Sam Raimi to write something for us. We got Stephen King to write something for us, and it was like a huge thing. These two schmucks from nowhere are coming out with this movie, this new label, and we, like I said, I made a joke about it. We thought, okay, we're going to do this thing. We're going to sell what we sell. If we make some money, we make some money. If we don't, we don't. We're just going to do this and go back to our regular shitty jobs. And, we can tell our grandkids that we did it. But then when we sold it like thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of pieces were being sold. And it was it was $100 a pop back in the day. And we're like, oh my God, this thing is actually picking up steam. And then the phone started to ring. We had to get an office. So we had our little office in Rockaway, New Jersey, you know, and all of a sudden, hey, I saw your Night of the Living Dead. You want to do my movie too? And that's kind of how it started. I mean, it's been 30 years, but I think our next film was Horror Hotel. Then we did things like, uh, you know, Mark of the Devil and Tombs of the Blind Dead. And the big step, the next big step in, you know, jump starting to where I am today was back in the day. I don't think they even do it anymore, but back in the day, every video dealer worth their salt, everybody went to something called the Video Software Dealers Association show. And it was always, except for one year, it was in Dallas, I think. It was always in Vegas, so it was always a big party. But every home video company was there. You know, Sony, Columbia, Warner, Paramount, this, that, you know, Good Times Home Video. Everybody had a booth. So we had a booth. We were advertising our stuff. And Anchor Bay was there. And so Jay Douglas, who I don't know if, you know, Jay Douglas, you know, a lot of people may not know him, but he was like sort of, you know, the guy at Anchor Bay who really had the faith in the horror films and was just like, this is great stuff. We should put some of this stuff out. Other than Thomas the Tank Engine, maybe we should start doing horror movies at Anchor Bay. And he comes over to our booth, he introduces himself, and he's like, hey guys, I saw what you did with Night of the Living Dead. How would you guys like to do Nightmare on Elm Street? How would you like to do Texas Chainsaw and all this other stuff? And we're like, you know, I was in my 20s and Night of the Living Dead was a little overwhelming for me, you know, even though we did it, it was something, you know, you accomplished it and it's there. And then this guy from this big company comes over and says, hey, you guys want to do Nightmare on Elm Street? And it's like, wait, what? You know, a year ago, I was a schmuck sitting behind a counter at a Laserdisc store, and everybody told me that my college degree wasn't going to amount to shit. And here's this guy offering Nightmare on Elm Street. And of course, we said yes. And then that started the whole, you know, the whole, you know, train rolling down the track. And Anchor Bay would acquire movies like Nightmare on Elm Street 1, 2, and 3, Texas Chainsaw Part 2, and all these other films. And the agreement that we had with them was, you guys do your magic on your restoration, because we've seen what you did with Night of the Living Dead, and it's amazing. You guys do this for us. We'll give you the Laserdisc rights absolutely free, as long as you give us copies of your work so that we can put the stuff out on VHS. Because remember, at the time, VHS was huge.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it still was in the early 90s. I mean, they were selling 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 tapes, and we're selling, you know, 6,000, 7,000 laser discs, right? But they said, here, have Nightmare on Elm Street 1, have Nightmare on Elm Street 2, have Nightmare on Elm Street 3. And it was just like, oh my God, this is like a real career now all of a sudden. So, you know, working with Anchor Bay and just continually doing more and more things with them sort of, you know, finessed the way we work. And after a while, all of a sudden, the company that we started with Night of the Living Dead, this little, you know, one shot thing that we thought we were never going to do again, all of a sudden became a new career for both of us.
Famously, Hooper made a remark in an interview because, okay, you're first experiencing a movie, whether it's in an imperfect form or not, it shapes your experience. Even those shitty, right out of the $2 bin VHS copies. Well, for years, people's experience watching Night of the Living Dead was that those really grainy, old-looking things, and it gives you a certain creepy feel.
Sure.
Those old VHSs of Chainsaw gave you this grindhouse, old creepy feel, and that's the audience's experience of it. And then you hear the artist say, I never tried to make a shitty-looking movie.
Right. That's what Toby actually said to me. And when I talked to Toby about it, he was like, everybody says, oh, I shot the movie with a documentary feel and blah, 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 blah. And he's like, I didn't shoot the movie with a documentary feel in mind. I shot the movie with the cheapest film stock I could, and I tried to do the best job I could. And the reason why it looks so shitty is because the lab just made crappy prints, right? But you're so tuned in to seeing it that way for so many years. And then I see people, oh, I don't like it. It's too clean. It doesn't have that. Well, yeah, you have in your brain, you have the memory of how you saw it and how you interpret it, but it's not necessarily what the director ever intended in the first place.
I know with the unions, they say that every time a restoration goes through, you actually have to get the cinematographer stamp. Did you have to get Daniel Pearl and Jock Haken? And
Sometimes they don't have time. Sometimes they don't want to. Sometimes they're like, you know what? I'd rather not revisit this movie again. Thanks. My career's in a different place than it was, back then. But more often than not, I relish them coming in, and it sort of validates the work. Working with Suspiria, and having the cinematographer tell me that after all these decades, I was the only person that asked him to be involved. It was just like, really? No one else? And he goes, no, you're the first person that said, hey, can you make sure that this is the way you want it?
that movie looks like Picasso painted it.
Yeah. And he was in Italy, and I was in California, and every day we would send him QuickTime files over the internet, which was a nightmare. Sending, QuickTime files over the internet. Here's today's work. Look at it in a calibrated studio in Italy and tell us if we're right, we're wrong, or what you want to change. And every day he's sending me back notes. This is great. Make this a little bit more yellow. Make this a little bit more blue. And then we'd fix it and we'd send it back. And then he'd be like, you nailed it. This is perfect. I have no more. And then we'd move on to the next section of the movie. And it went on for weeks. But at the end of the day, we've got Suspiria the way he wanted it. And I wouldn't have it any other way. It was very, very difficult to coordinate something like that, but I did it anyway because I care enough about the movies to make sure that, at least there's somebody involved that can watch this thing and say, you know what, this is great. It looks better than it did when we put it out. That to me is worth all the work and all the hassle and all the delays that come with this business. Is just making sure that the people that made the movie are happy with what you've done.
Elite Entertainment. Tell us about that getting formed and what other titles you got to work on under that label.
Well, it's been 30 years. I left Elite after 3 or 4 years. It's just the way it goes. Sometimes things work out, sometimes they don't. I felt like I needed to do my own thing, so I left and started Synapse. But at the time, we had done Night of the Living Dead, Nightmare on Elm Street 1, 2, and 3, Texas Chainsaw 1, Texas Chainsaw 2, Evil Dead 2, a bunch of Hammer titles like Rasputin the Mad Monk and Dracula Prince of Darkness, and just all kinds of stuff. I know I'm forgetting a million things. Stepford Wives, which was crazy because we got the rights to Stepford Wives through Anchor Pay, but it's never come back out again, I don't think, from anyone. It came out on Laserdisc and VHS from Anchor Bay, 30 years ago, and that's it. Invaders from Mars with Toby, all kinds of stuff. And then, about 3 or 4 years later, I cut ties and I started Synapse Films with my current business partner, Jerry Chandler, and just kind of continued, doing things. But it was a cramped 3 or 4 years. The Laserdisc industry was fading fast, It really was. I think towards the tail end of my being with Elite, Laserdisc, they were telling us, hey guys, Laserdisc is on the way out. This new format DVD is on its way in. And even, we hung on to Laserdisc. I put out a couple of Laserdiscs with Synapse. I put out, Dario Argento's World of Horror, Gamera, Document of the Dead on Laserdisc. And then that was when the whole market dropped out. And they were like, well, they're closing the plants. The machines are being dismantled. They're not going to have we're not going to have a Laserdisc renaissance anytime soon. I don't think, even though I would love for them to come back like VHS has, lately. But yeah, Laserdisc is over. The machines are pretty much done. And then after that, DVD took over and it jumped into Synapse Films. And I've been with this company now since 95, 96, I think, 96.
So how did you get partnered up with Jerry?
Well, Jerry, I have known Jerry since I was in high school. So actually, I think I was actually before high school. I think I was maybe 14 or 15 years old. And the funny thing is we actually first met as video traders in Fangoria magazine, which I mentioned earlier. I remember looking at the back of Fango and you see all those free subscriber ads and everybody was like, video traders wanted, your list gets mine. And he had a subscription and he put his address there. So I emailed him my list of VHS tapes and I wrote him a letter and it was funny because he still has my letter. It's in the office. It's like, I'm 56 years old. So he saved my letter for 42 years. And we became, friends via Fangoria magazine. And it's crazy because 42 years later now he's my best friend and my business partner. When I left Elite Entertainment, he was like, you want to get away from that, but you still want to be in the business. If you need an investor, I'll be an investor, but I got my own thing going on. I got my own family. I got my own, life. I'm working, the steel company with my father in Detroit, and I'm doing this and this and this. But if you want to continue to do this yourself, I can maybe float you a little bit of money as long as we put out a kind of a payback, with interest or whatever. And I said, okay. And I went to the attorney and I said, I don't want to do this by myself. For 4 years, 4 years, I did the Elite thing, but I don't want to do this on my own. And I know I had it was a bad time with Elite towards the end. I'm not going to lie, but I just wanted to continue. But he was like, I'll just give you some money, and you pay me back, and you can do your thing. Well, I go, okay, fine. And then when we met to finish up the paperwork and get everything else on paper, I made him my business partner. It was in the contract that, no, you're not just going to give me money. You're going to be my business partner, and we're going to be equal partners in Synapse. Your share is going to be my share, and you're still going to give me money, but I'm going to pay you back, and you are going to reap the rewards of Synapse. And we didn't know if it was going to fly. It could have been another 2 or 3 years, 4 years, just like Synapse or like Elite was, and then we go our separate ways, whatever. Now 20, almost 30, 20 something since 96. So, it's been 20 some odd years later and we're still business partners. But I have to admit, I think he was a little pissed at first because he was just like, I'm here to give you some cash to keep your company, to keep another company going. And now you're dragging me into this mess. But we've been great partners ever since. I mean, it certainly lasted a long time. And I think that's because we were friends for such a long time before we were business partners. With Elite, it was like a, a thing where we really didn't know each other all that well. We had an idea. We went to the idea and things escalated from there. But in the end, I just wasn't happy. And I needed to get out and I needed to do this. Jerry's always been a horror fan. He's always been he's kind of a like-minded guy. We like Living Dead at Manchester Morgue. We like all this kind of stuff that we do. And I felt if I'm going to be in business with somebody, I now want to be in business with somebody that I know and that I can trust and that we can, work together on things and see eye to eye on certain movies. I mean, we still don't agree, 100%. If we did, it wouldn't be a very good relationship. As a business, you got to kind of bounce ideas off of each other. You can't be, agree on the same things all the time. And that's kind of what our strength is, I think. He bounces ideas off of me. I bounce ideas off of him. Titles come in. He gives me his review of the title and I say, well, maybe we should still do it, or maybe, nah, I don't want to do it. We work together really, really well. And I think that, that's great. And we're still a company. I mean, we've got a third business partner who's only got 10%. He's a guy that, works with us sometimes on some things. But for the most part, we've been two guys in an office for over 20 years and we haven't really expanded. We don't have a huge team of people. We don't have, we're not doing this and that and putting out 5 titles a month and having recalls because we screwed something up, because we were trying to get things out too fast. I know that's a lot of people are like, Synapse is going to take them a couple of years to put this thing out. But yeah, because we're two guys in an office and I just want to make sure it's right the first time. I don't want to have a recall. And I think that that's our strength. We're very small. We have very little overhead. We work with the company, with the people that own the movies. We let them, kind of do what they want most of the time. And I think that's the beauty of what our relationship is now. We went from young friends back in the 80s to now being business partners. And he's in his 60s now. I'll be 57 this year. So it's been a long time.
How did you guys link up with Felcher?
I remember when I first met Mike was actually if those of you who have the old Dawn of the Dead Laserdisc from me back in the day, there's a video, like a featurette of George at the Monroeville Mall, and we were interviewing people, and we had a big signing at the Monroeville Mall with George and everything, and Mike was there. So, at the time we didn't know who he was. And then, if memory serves, you might want to ask him next time he's on, if he comes back on. But I think he started working for us as our web designer way back, back in the 90s, when everybody was like, trying to make some sort of a web presence for their product or whatever. He was sort of our web designer. And I remember talking to Jay Douglas at Anchor Bay, and Jay was like, we have a position open here. And Mike was super fan. He loved everything. He was so knowledgeable about movies and he's got a great sense of humor. And I love working with the guy. And Jay is like, we should hire Mike. So Mike went from working on our website to working at Anchor Bay. And I eventually moved to Michigan. And it just so happens that where Mike lives now is walking distance from our office at Synapse. So, we continued he worked for Anchor Bay for many years. Then when he left Anchor Bay and did his Red Shirt Pictures company, we still worked with him, putting together featurettes and interviews and commentaries and things for us. And now we have a different relationship with Mike, where Mike has his own label that he's trying to launch. He's launched Red Shirt Pictures, video or whatever. His first release on his own was we put the effects documentary on our old DVD. He remastered it and re-released it with extra footage as his first Red Shirt Pictures home video release. And his second release is going to be Trick or Treat. And we are distributing that for him. Now, that I want to make that clear because people seem to think that it's a Synapse Films disc, and I keep getting 100 emails a day. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? I was like, guys, it's not us. For one time, you can't blame me for the delay. Mike is still working on the supplements and getting some extras together, and dealing with some of the people hasn't been easy. The movie is done. It's playing on, cable. Our version is out there. It's on Screenbox. So the delay is just getting the extras and getting that done. And when Mike is done with those extras, then he'll turn everything in and we'll get the disc released. But it's his baby, and I'll let him take as much time as he needs to get his baby done right. And we have plans already to do another film with him, which I can't say what it is yet because I don't want to announce it. But, we're already working together on another movie.
What's been an ungettable get that you have gotten, and what's your white whale you're still trying to chase?
Well, I would love to do The Devils at some point. I mean, that is kind of on my short list. Even back in the day when I first started in this business, I have a list of movies that I want to do. And The Devils is on there. But, we have offered a pretty penny to Warner Brothers for The Devils, more so than we probably should offer, and they still said no. And that's amazing to me. That you bring them an offer of 6 digits or more, and they go, nah, no thanks. So that whether it's us or Criterion or whoever it is, I want to see that out on a 4K disc at some point. I really do. That one is the one that I want to see. As far as movies that I thought would be unobtainable for me, that we ended up actually getting, was Suspiria. We got Suspiria. People ask us all the time, how do you go out and how do you pick the movies that you get? And, how do you get curtains and prom night? And, what do you do to grab up stuff like that? And my answer to that is sometimes they just fall into our laps, and I imagine that's the same for a lot of companies. We were talking to the owners of Suspiria about something else entirely. And it was like a movie that they had or something. And we were just on the phone with them and we're like, can we get this? And they're like, no, we don't have this movie right now. And I'm on a conference with my business partner. We're in the office. We've got the person on speaker. And I said, well, what's the deal with Suspiria? Because at the time, if you remember, David Gordon Green was going to do the remake of Suspiria. It was actually David Gordon Green who did the new Halloweens. He had a deal to do Suspiria. And it fell through and it went to, Luca or whatever. And we were on the phone with them and I go, well, so what's happening with Suspiria? And they go, just thinking, what's happening with David Gordon Green and the remake. I'm very curious. It wasn't me fishing for the movie at all. And they said, oh, well, that fell through. And I go, it fell through. And they go, well, as a matter of fact, we've got the rights back from Miramax if you want it.
Yes, please.
And that's how we got Suspiria. It was just like that. and I'm sitting across our, Jerry and I had at the time we had a shared office where I was my desk was on one side of the room and his was on the other, and we're on speaker, and she goes, well, it's available if you guys want it. And I just looked at Jerry and I'm mouthing, I'm like, fuck, Jesus, what? What did they just say? And Jerry's like, yeah, that would be a good, we're trying to hold back our excitement, and we're like, yeah, that would be a good one. Yeah, let's
Yeah,
talk
yeah,
about that. And my eyes are like golf balls. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? They just said, oh, you guys can, and it's not it. You still have to come to an agreement, right? You can't just say you can have it if you want it here. You got to come up with terms and a deal and money and that kind of thing. But my point being is that within a few days, the deal was done just because we asked what was going on with the remake, you know. And they're like, "Oh yeah, we got it back. That remake is done. It's over with, and you guys can have it if you want it."
what's cool is a lot of companies will put out catalogs of certain filmmakers. Felcher's worked on, or Scream Factory's put out, the Carpenter catalog and the Hooper catalog and Wes Craven's movies, and so it's really cool that companies are able to archive and honor and for all time all these catalogs, and you've been able to put out several Argento films.
Yeah.
I know one of them that Felcher said that for Phenomena, the Creepers cut, he took the Phenomena cut and he went in and conformed it.
Yes. Yeah, he did that for us. What happened was, and if you were, I don't know, some fans might remember, but when we put out Phenomena the first time, it took a long time. And this is, some of the things that, people like us have to deal with that the fans never hear about is we announced Phenomena, before the 4K one that we put out a couple of years ago. We announced Phenomena and we put it out on DVD and Blu-ray, years ago. When we first announced Phenomena, Warner Brothers, because remember New Line, is merged with Warner, and New Line put out Creepers, right? We got a note from their legal department, and they're like, "We own Phenomena. What are you guys talking about?" And we're like, "Well, wait, what do you mean? You guys have Creepers?" Well, yeah, but that's Phenomena, and we own Phenomena. And Jerry and I are like, what the, now what? Right? So we got this studio, like, you can't put this out because we own it. Who did you get it from? Who told you that they own? And I'm thinking, where were you when Anchor Bay put it out on DVD and sold 1 billion copies? Right? What are you picking on me for? What are you picking on little old Synapse for? It's been out 1 million times, from companies much bigger than us, and now you're picking on us, man. Are you telling me you didn't know that Phenomena's been out on home video, before? And they're like, well, we heard you guys were putting it out, and you can't do this until we get this figured out. I said, well, you know, okay, well, wait, the owners of the movie are like, no, we own it. We've got chain of title for Phenomena, whatever. Well, we just had to sit and wait for all this to, the legal department of Warner Brothers doesn't give two shits about these two guys in Michigan trying to put out Phenomena. They're dealing with, Zack Snyder movies, right? They don't give a shit about us. But when something gets on their plate and they're like, well, we got to figure this out. Why, what's going on? 2 years later, 2 years later, we get an email from Warner Legal. And they're like, oh, we just want to let you know, yeah, we don't own that title anymore. We lost it in 1989. or something. And I'm like, what the fuck? You made us wait 2 years of our ticking away license, and you send us, oh yeah, we were mistaken. We don't own this movie anymore. Yeah, it was a short-term deal from New Line. They didn't own the movie. They had it for a short amount of time, so we lost the rights to that. Oh, and by the way, if you want Creepers, get all the shit out of our vault because we don't want it. So they're like, if we don't own this movie anymore, you've got to get all this crap out of our vault, otherwise we're going to throw it in the garbage. And I was just like, no, 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 no. We'll take Creepers. So we got Creepers, and the funny thing was, when I got it from Warner Brothers, it was like a battered element. It wasn't even like a negative or a dupe or anything. It was just like something like a answer print or something. And the leader of each reel was footage from Nightmare on Elm Street 2. And didn't Jack edit Creepers? I think Jack Shoulder was the editor of Creepers. So what we got from Warner Brothers was this answer print thing that Jack Shoulder had probably put together from the long version of Phenomena, but they gave us a mag track for it, like, a clean, nice mag and this element. So we did a quickie scan of the element for Mike Felcher, and he used that and he put together the version of Creepers for us. So, sometimes it's not all fun and games in this business. When a major studio comes at you and says, we're not going to sue you unless you put this out, but we got to figure this out first. And, and we paid money for it and we just sat on it, right? We had to sit and wait for Warner Brothers to say, oh, you know what? We lost this movie a long time ago. Sorry for the trouble. That's kind of, we're not alone in that. A lot of the other companies that are out there have to deal with the same kind of stuff. But, it's not always fun and games in this business. Sometimes it's very stressful trying to get a movie out that you think you own the rights to, and then a studio comes out of the woodwork and says, not so fast.
So I heard a story about the lost footage or the found footage from years ago of the original Halloween, and how Akkad Malik didn't want to play ball and all yada yada yada. Mm-hmm. Well, there was on Netflix. There's a thing called Movies That Made Us, and one of the they put a Halloween, Friday 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, and on the episode of Halloween, they show all this test footage of the Panaglide. They show Nick Castle getting up and doing that jig, that little river dance, and I'm like, this is some of the footage that you talked about that Malik wouldn't, So I guess some kind of deal was made.
No deal was made. Did you notice that the little dance footage was zoomed in and my name was removed from the footage?
No.
I certainly noticed that. And so did Billy Kirkus, who was the guy who has the footage. And I saw it and I'm like, oh my God, they zoomed in, took our names off the bottom of it, and used it on the show. There was some stuff that I transferred off myself. Not a whole lot, maybe 20 minutes or so of stuff that I looked at back in the day that we transferred off. I don't know how they got that footage. I have no idea. But it was used. What can you do? I don't speak to Billy anymore. Billy Kirkus and I haven't spoken in years. But from what I understand, he called Netflix or the production company that made the TV that series, and was like, "What? That's footage that we transferred off. This is footage that I got. why didn't, can you credit us at least? I mean, you took our names off the footage. You zoomed in so that they could have just blurred our names out, but they zoomed it in, got rid of our names, and they didn't even say under the special thanks at the end. It didn't even say, special thanks, Billy Kirkus and Don May Jr. or whatever. It didn't even say that. So Billy calls him and says, "Can you at least give us a thank you?" And I guess, the answer from Netflix was kind of "fuck you." was what basically happened. They were like, uh, you know, F you, screw you. We're not going to do that. I don't know what's going to happen to that footage, to be honest. I know where it is. I know what's there. And what's there is pretty astonishing. We have different footage, or I shouldn't say we, because I'm not involved with it anymore. Billy has uh, footage of the opening scene with the Panaglide, where he looks in the window, sees his sister, goes into the kitchen, picks up the knife, goes up the stairs and kills his sister. There's multiple versions of that. One of them they didn't use because the lights were put in such a way where you could see the shadow of the camera going up the stairs, so they obviously didn't use that. But there's another one where the actor and his sister are sitting in the chair and he's looking through the window, and he's actually, getting a couple of handfuls. Right? It's like, wait, wow. He's like, you don't see that in the movie. And then he goes upstairs, and because the mask was added optically to the movie, the original camera negative doesn't have the face with the two holes. It was added later. The scene plays out, and you can actually see the actress that plays the sister completely nude, sitting in the chair at the mirror, and he's stabbing her with the face thing is completely removed from the image, so you see the whole thing. And that stuff is things, and there's bloopers. There's some Kyle Richards bloopers where he's trying to pull babysitter through the window and all, and she like looks at the camera and she's like, "What am I supposed to do?" Stuff like that. There's all kinds of stuff, and Tommy Lee Wallace, we called him because he was the editor, and we said, "So what exactly is this stuff that we have at the time?" And he said, "Well, Halloween was a strict budget movie. I mean, we didn't have a whole lot of money. So we kind of had a unwritten rule where it was like 3 strikes and you're out. We did 3 maximum of every shot in the movie. And if we didn't get it, we just used one of the 3. We didn't have time to do take 8, take 9, take 10. We just didn't have that kind of money. That translates into film, editing, development. He's like, so we did 3 shots, and if we didn't get it, we didn't get it. We just used the best one of the 3. If we, So he goes, what you have is probably the other 2 shots of every single shot in the movie.
Wow.
So you could actually, I mean, if you wanted to, I guess, you could probably recreate some scenes, and there was no audio to some of this stuff, but it doesn't matter. People are like, well, there's no audio for it, so what good is it? The detractors that are trying to poo-poo it as something that, who cares? There's no audio, so what? Well, last time I checked, Michael Myers didn't talk. So are you telling me that you don't want us to show you footage of Michael Myers where you could just add the breathing or some outdoor, wind or something and recreate some scenes that you didn't see in the movie? You're poo-pooing on, and I think that's part of the problem with Malik is I don't think he understands what we have or what Billy has. And I think the fans want to see it. And it's just unfortunate that it's not, I don't think anybody's ever going to see it.
Growing up in a house where your dad was not just the person you look up to because he's your dad and you're trying to do what dad. I'm a parent now, so my son copies things I do, and I did the same
Hmm.
with my dad. And my dad's a filmmaker, retired, but and
Hmm.
so now he only works on projects I do basically, and so I get that father son experience. He'll go through and meticulously fix this and create a million composite layers to garbage mats to paint out this element and add, and remove this.
I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, but there was and I didn't end up fixing it. Um, Somebody was very upset with a special effect, and they wanted line removal. You could see the harness on the person, and they're like, "We should really paint that out because that." And I was just like, "It's been in the movie for 40 fucking years. What? Why? People, when you go to the movie theater and you see it on a screen the size of a basketball court, they've seen it, right?
Yeah.
And when you put and you go into a computer and you paint this stuff out, you run the risk of making something else more noticeable. And it's all because people think, well, I've scanned this in a higher resolution now, and now everything is showing up that I didn't think would be there.
Like James Cameron for Terminator 2 for the 4K, in the scene where the semi truck goes down into the reservoir. He fixed the windshield because in the sequence it was supposed to either be broken or not broken, but one shot was wrong. So
Right.
he just fixed the windshield, so now it makes
Yeah.
sense.
Well, maybe when he realizes that in the first Terminator, when the Terminator's looking through the phone book for Sarah Connor's address, and he goes to the Sarah Connor and shoots her. The none of the house numbers in the phone book match the house number on the house that he goes to. So now he's gonna go in and fix the house number digitally to match one of the white page, house numbers now. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's James Cameron. We can change what he wants, I guess. I mean, didn't he change something in Titanic? I think he did.
Yeah, the boat doesn't sink.
Well, maybe he did it on the Blu-ray, but I know it's on the 4K. He changed the stars out in one shot because Neil deGrasse Tyson or somebody told him that the position of the stars at in that particular shot wouldn't be the way they were. And I was like, really? I mean, you're going for that accuracy in the stars.
If you think about movies editing like music, there's a tempo. It's
Hmm.
catching a beat, and when you put a new little beat in the middle of two things that already are,
Hmm.
it's like a hiccup.
Yeah.
It's a speed bump.
Yep.
Have you ever seen a version that you actually thought the director's cut was better?
That's tough. That's a tough call. I think maybe the new version of Godfather 3 fixes some things.
I know Coppola has redone the Apocalypse Now a gazillion times.
I still like the super long one.
The long one is you need to take a pee break in the middle or an intermission or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like you have movies like Alien or Aliens. When
Mhm.
they put out a special edition and they have those extra
Mhm.
scenes.
I love Alien. I remember seeing that in the theater. My sister took me with her then boyfriend, and I was scared shitless. So I have great memories of seeing Alien, in the theater. And then when they came out with that new director's cut or whatever, I the only thing that I really liked was that fight that they have in the hallway. Is like, doesn't Ripley like get into an argument with somebody in the hall and they get into like fisticuffs or whatever? Alien's director's cut, I guess, is a little better. I prefer Alien.
Blade Runner, the voiceover or not voiceover?
I like them all. So that's for me. It's like I like all of them.
Is Deckard a replicant?
Yes, yes, he is. I think so.
From the guy who made Twin Peaks, David Lynch is such a masterful craftsman that when you hear him say something like this one statement, you might think it's pretentious and over the top, but when a person is an artist and they understand what this means, he goes, "When they don't give me final cut, I die the death." You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Yep.
it takes my soul away, and I die the death. Um, and he was said on some show. He went further and say, "I just wanted to lay in traffic." You know,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Wow, that." I have some people that work with me still today that have associated ourselves with the wrong people that were going to try to help
Mm-hmm.
us get our movies made, and we later learned they were toxic. And
Yeah.
when you find out there's certain people that's the snake in the grass, you know, they
Mm-hmm.
but by the time they bite you, it's too late. I hopefully you haven't had to experience too much of that toxicity in your end of the
No.
business.
No. Just with some of the actors, like they're like, oh, I'm embarrassed by this. I don't want to be involved. That's kind of I had one, I'm not going to say what the movie was. We had one actress kind of go crazy on us once over something. And I was just like, what the fuck? She's screaming about how, nobody was ever paid. And, years later, the movie's coming out and we're still not going to get paid and blah, 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 blah. And, at the end of the day, it's not my problem that you signed a shitty deal. you know, I mean, it's if you're upset with the movie because you signed a deal that did not really favor you, don't badmouth the movie. Don't get mad at me because I asked you to participate. You know, that's the kind of the toxicity that we get.
There's a certain breed of hustler, you know, that is it's a dying breed. I don't know if they still exist. You know, the Canon guys, you know, those Jack Warners and those, you know, the Xanax and all those people that are like, ah, I'm gonna make a movie, yeah, Shane.
Right, right,
You
right.
know, but they had chutzpah and they moxie and they did what it took to get the movie made. The guys that owned those studios, they were filmmakers. What have you observed over the years of the dying breed, or if there still are some of those hustlers still moving and shaking?
Oh, geez. Well, I just heard, well, one of the people that in the genre end of the business, in the horror genre, one of the guys that was kind of like that was Terry Levine, I guess. Um, I don't know what happened. I heard he passed away recently. I don't know if you've heard that or not, but Terry
No.
Levine I haven't verified that, but somebody mentioned that to me the other day, and he was, like him and the films around the world and all. That was Evil Dead. I these guys, like Richard Gordon, who did like Fiend Without a Face, all these guys, they're all Roger Corman. The guy would get $3 and find somebody to make a movie. But as far as those types of guys, I never. I met Charlie Meeker, and he was partners with Feldman, who did stuff like 2 Minute Warning, uh, Witness, all those kinds of things. So that was kind of like those were, big producers. Most of the guys, I end up doing, dealing with like the genre guys like Charlie Band and stuff like that. But it's weird because the studios themselves. I don't really know anybody at Universal anymore. Um, Warner Brothers, I still do work there, so I talk to those people. But the regimes are so strange. You hear all these stories about the new regime at Warner Brothers and how they're, hiding movies like that the Wile E. Coyote movie that we're never gonna see.
Or Batgirl.
Yeah, yeah. It's like I don't get it. I mean, I understand that they can say, "Oh, it cost us $120 million, and we can take it as a tax write-off or whatever." But to spend all that time and effort and put all those people through all that and then just throw it basically throwing it away. I don't understand that. You know, back in the day, in the 70s, 60s, 50s, did anybody ever make a movie and then never put it out? You know,
I've heard that there are certain filmmakers that they will, or well, people with money, not necessarily
Mhm.
filmmakers, if something exists in the world that they don't agree with, and just the fact that it exists somehow is an affront to their person, they're like,
Mhm.
I'm gonna buy this just so I can burn it,
Yeah.
and it'll never exist. You know, so it must be nice to have a surplus of money that you could wipe your butt with and just piss it
Yeah.
away.
Well, I heard from the star of one of our movies. Um, she was telling me that her boyfriend at the time, they were in a movie together, and she had a career, but his career skyrocketed, and at the time he tried to take the movie that they were in together and completely remove it from the system. Like, he wanted it gone. Like, I'm embarrassed by this. I don't want this on my IMDb page. I don't want this on my resume of movies. I don't want people to know that I was in this. And she said he was so set on removing this movie from existence because he was ashamed of it that he didn't even think that there's other people in this movie too that get residuals, that have families, that rely on residuals to live. And for him to just say, I'm bigger than everybody else, and now I don't want people to see this movie, he's depriving those people of getting money from a movie that they made that they're proud of. Maybe he's not, but I was just like, the nerve, right? It's like, I'm gonna throw this movie in the garbage can because I'm embarrassed by my participation. And I don't care that these other people in the movie aren't going to ever be paid for it again if that happens. And I was just like, that is a really shitty thing to do to somebody. Eileen Dietz, who was in The Exorcist as, the stunt double, and, we're friends. And she was telling me, when the version you've never seen came out, however many years later, it was like over what, 20 years later or something.
Yeah, it came out like 2001, 2000, something
Yeah,
like
so
that.
more than 20 years later, she said, when that movie came out, I got a residual check that had more zeros on it than I'd ever seen in my life. So she was just, even 20, 30 years later, these people are still getting paid for movies that they were in. And for somebody or an individual or a studio to just say, no, you're never gonna, no, we're just not gonna put it out. It sucks, because these people, they rely on this kind of stuff, to pay the bills, and those people are going to be deprived of that. But thankfully, the movie that I was talking about with the actor is still available. He never succeeded in, removing the movie from existence. He never succeeded in that, but he tried.
It's interesting how copyrights work because, like, they made Night of the Living Dead 1990 just so they could regain the copyright again. This is music related, but Taylor Swift is releasing all of her library of music, and she's doing remixes of the
Remixes.
songs where she's changing just enough, and
Yep.
she can re-release them, and suddenly it's like, ha, gotcha! Like, she's
Yeah.
getting her copyrights back because of these technicalities.
Well, the movie that I was talking, that I'm sure that that Felcher was mentioning, the movie that has never come out. The producers, the copyright holders, when we got the movie, you know, they actually sold us the whole thing.
Yeah.
So the copyright has actually been transferred into our name. So we own the movie. We have, and it was funny. I was like, wait, we're not just licensing this for a few years, where the copyright is actually ours now. And in the copyright, or in the agreement, it says, if you guys ever decide to remake it or make a sequel, the original director would like first right of refusal to be involved. I'm like, wait a minute, we can remake this or make a sequel to this too? That wasn't in the scope of what we had talked about. But my business partner Jerry is a great negotiator, and he's somehow negotiated this whole other deal. But yeah, the copyright thing, it is interesting. I mean, I'm glad that George and those guys were able to do something with Night of the Living Dead just to try to get that back.
So when they have different versions of a movie that come out on mediums, like I own Maniac Cop,
Mm-hmm.
the first one. I have a DVD of it and a Blu-ray through you guys, and then the
Mm-hmm.
sequels are through Blue Underground, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So how come on the DVD it has a commentary with
Mm-hmm.
all those people and some video extras, but on the Blu-ray it doesn't have that commentary?
This Bill was mad at me. We were working on like Frankenhooker and some other things. And the producer was like, "You want Maniac Cop too?" And I said, "Well, why?" Yeah. I mean, Maniac Cop, I've worked on it before. I'd love to work on it again. And he said, "Well, good, because Bill Lustig keeps bothering us about it, and we don't want to give it to him." And that's, and it's sad because I don't know what the situation was between those guys. Came back and he put in the deal that we weren't allowed to work with Bill. He didn't want Bill working on this at all. He didn't want his finger, his stamp of anything. And I said, "Well, we got to get him on a commentary or something." And he's like, "Nope, nope, you can't. You can't." So we called Vinny, my old business partner from Elite, and we're like, "Well, look, we did this other commentary. Can we license it from you so we can put it on our DVD?" And he goes, "Yeah." And so we put it on the DVD. But then Bill was so mad about the situation where the producer of the film was like, "I don't want to work with Bill. I don't want you working with Bill. I don't want him anywhere near this thing." He sent us a letter and he said, "Look, I'd rather you not put that commentary on your Blu-ray." Um, and it hurt because Bill was pissed. He was pissed at us, and I mean, the situation. What are you going to do, right? The filmmaker says, when you did that commentary, I didn't sign anything. I didn't sign a piece of paper that said that you had the right to, use this, because we were friends at the time. Bill, we were hanging out, so we're like, "Hey, Bill, let's do a commentary for Maniac Cop." And he was right, right? He's like, "I didn't sign anything that gave you permission to use my voice, and I don't want you putting that commentary on your Blu-ray." And I understood. He was mad. He was pissed. And I think he's still pissed at us to this day over it, but it wasn't really our fault, right? It was, he is just mad that he didn't get Maniac Cop. And I would be too if I was in his shoes. It's his movie, right? I mean, how would you feel if you had a label and you directed a movie and the movie that you made, you got the other two, but you don't have the first one? I
Yeah.
get where he's coming from, right? But it ruined our relationship. It really did. I would love nothing more than for Bill to call and say, "Hey man, next time you're in LA, let's go out to lunch." Right? Because I miss the guy. That's my biggest uh I guess sadness of being in this business, is the fact that Bill and I don't get along anymore. Over Maniac Cop of all movies, right? You
Yeah.
know, and it sucks. But maybe someday, maybe it'll change. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be repaired, but I'm willing to put everything aside. I mean, the whole situation happened because of the producers, not because of me. And Bill took it out on me. I guess he took it out on us, me and Jerry, and said, "You put that thing on your DVD, but you can't put it on the Blu-ray." And he in a way, he thought he was punishing us, and he was, right? He was like, "Look, you can't. I didn't sign anything. You can't use it." But all it did was sell more copies of the DVD at the end of the day.
If you have the original, I guess the Laserdisc and the DVD for John Carpenter's The Thing, the commentary that has Kurt Russell and Carpenter, they're very loose in talking about whatever they want.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never compared, but I have I have the DVD, then I have the Blu-ray and all that stuff. Well, I was told that the studio had to go in and remove comments. And every time there's a new version of the film, more comments are taken out of their commentary. It's like, geez, Louise, it's like, come on.
When I was, working at the Laserdisc store, one of the big controversies of what we're talking about was Prince of Tides. So Criterion put out Prince of Tides on Laserdisc with Barbra Streisand commentary. The thing was done. It was packaged. It was, replicated and ready to go. And Barbra Streisand said, I said something I shouldn't have. We have to take that off. And they're like, wait, what? And they did. And I think it cost Criterion a fortune, because when Barbra Streisand wants you to remove something, you take it off, right? And that was a big thing. I would love to know what was on that commentary that she had second thoughts about saying, but they had to remove. I think they removed the whole thing. I don't even think they edited it out. I think they just removed it. And that was like a big deal, because I think that disc was something like $100 retail. And I remember it's like, wait, Prince of Tides has been delayed because they replicated all these discs, and now they have to go back and remove something that was, said that she decided she had second thoughts about it and made them take it off. So, luckily we've never had that. Where with the commentaries, though, everybody's got those things at the beginning of the discs now. If there's something that might be a little controversial, it's like, hey, their opinions aren't our opinions or whatever. But people say things. I've said things that I shouldn't say, and we've all been there. But to have it like for on a release that somebody's going to have on their shelf for decades, and it's like, oh yeah, I said that back then. It's like,
It's funny that whatever the plan was, the universe has its own plan. So, make God laugh by telling me your plans, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, Spielberg famously wanted Jaws to be this, grand guignol with bloodbath.
Yeah,
and he could, and he couldn't, and he couldn't do it. And the best thing that ever happened in that movie was Brucey the shark didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Because he had to come up with the suggested menace and the barrels and the dock chasing, and it took 45 minutes, an hour before Chief Brody was like, come here and chum some of this shit, and suddenly the shark,
the face comes up. Yeah,
that impact an hour in would not have happened if there wasn't a slow build. Same thing with Alien. Alien is a very slow build. That first movie,
first hour, nothing really happens.
We have become so, I guess, spoiled ever since like the MTV generation of, fast cuts and stuff, that sometimes I think we have forgotten how to watch a movie. That there are older movies that The Godfather is amazing. It is slow, and people that get restless watching slower content will be like, come on, pick up the pace. You watch The Wizard of Oz. The people that ran MGM, Warner Brothers, Turner, all that back then, they were like, Dorothy singing about Over the Rainbow. That's the heart and soul of the movie. Is she's longing for adventure. She's longing for another life. She's in black and white. She wants color. And the cigar smoking moguls were like, we want you to cut it out. We want you to get to the freaks. Get to Oz faster. there's so many things that you find out that they almost changed in famous movies. And if they changed those movies and took those scenes out or whatever, the movies wouldn't have been as iconic.
I watch Twitch sometimes too, because I like the cooking shows that are on Twitch and stuff. I mean, if, you know, I don't know if people are familiar with Twitch, but it's like a gaming platform mostly. But there's
Yeah.
things, and there's one guy who plays games. He's from my area, so I watch the guy. He kind of grew up in the same area that I did, and he's like, "I've got PTSD. I can't watch movies." And I'm like, "What do you mean you can't?" He goes, "I don't have the attention span. I sit for like half an hour and then I get restless and I can't deal." And I'm like, that is so awful. To think that someone has a condition like that they can't even enjoy, even if it was like the greatest movie ever. My favorite movie of all time is The Last Picture Show. That's my desert island movie. I showed somebody the movie, and to me it's like sacred. That film is sacred to me. It's like, if you don't like it, fine, but watch the movie and then tell me your opinion later. We put it on, and like 30 minutes in, she's on her phone texting her friends. She's not watching the movie. She's, you know, and I'm just like, you're in my home. You wanted to watch what I considered my favorite movie, and you're not even paying attention to it.
But you were showing her. You said this is my favorite movie.
It is, yeah.
You're putting your heart and soul out there for her, and you're like, this movie, I identify with this. This movie
Yes.
is me. Is me.
And she's,
if I watch a version of something that I've worked on that somebody else handled the post on, and then I have to watch it for revisions and notes, and especially if it's a feature, you can get burnt out very easily. When you have to do quality check to watch Felcher's extras
yep,
in HD, and then you have
yep.
to watch the DVD,
Mm-hmm.
you know, watch every
Oh.
commentary, every audio track, every extra.
Uh-huh.
What is your process so you don't burn yourself out having
I
to
burn
watch
myself
it?
out. I burn myself out. I
Oh,
do.
you do. Oh, you do.
Mhm. I that's the biggest, but that, it's sort of like my strength, because everybody that I work with knows that okay, here's an example. I'm working on Blue Sunshine right now, and we're doing a new Blu-ray and we're doing a 4K. And we finished the Blu-ray last week, and I went through it. And well, I mean, before we finished it last week, I was going through it and I was making sure that the subtitles were all coming up where they're supposed to. And then I realized that there was a couple of spelling mistakes, which happens. You know, everybody, you know, you have mistakes in subtitles, you know, little things that you notice. So I said, "Oh, this line, you know, he says her instead of him or whatever. We got to change it." Fine. My mania, you know, the person that does the change says, "Okay, here's a screen grab of the change, so you can see that the sentence is now correct. Here's a screen grab of this subtitle, so you can see the sentence is now correct." I still have to watch the whole fucking thing again, even if there's a small change in the authoring, the compression, the menus, the whatever it is, the sound. I have to rewatch the whole goddamn thing, and it burns me out, but that's just me.
I've driven my wife crazy to no end, and I'm sure every filmmaker and artist drives their personal spouse or family members nuts about these things. Um, Before meeting me, she could appreciate films, and she saw the surface, and
Mhm.
she would pick up on the things she would pick up on under the surface or not. As a filmmaker, I would be telling talking to the screen, saying, "Oh, I would do this differently." So now she can't watch movies without thinking about
Yeah.
the inner workings of it.
I love watching films, don't get me wrong, but I'm constantly looking at what the other companies are doing for their transfers, what they're doing for their sound, what they're doing for their cleanup. You know, I can tell when they didn't want to pay for a colorist to come in and do a good job. You know, I'm like, okay, they must have spent 8 hours on this, you know, because this color is not, it's not as good as it could be. And that's the curse of being in this business the way it is. It's just, you're
No.
constantly comparing your work to someone else's. And it sucks. Maybe when I retire from all of this, someday I'll be able to tune all that out, my past career out, and just enjoy movies again. But I don't know if I can.
What is something that you've learned after all these years that you actually wish you could have told your younger self that might have helped at least giving you the wisdom or the enthusiasm to keep going when you maybe were having a moment where you didn't think you could keep going?
When the whole thing with Elite was changing, and I was getting out, I was very, very upset, like at how things were going. It did, here I was, I took my entire life and I moved to another part of the country to do the Elite thing, and it wasn't working the way I wanted it to work out, so I decided to leave. Um, if I could go back in time and I would just say I would tell myself everything's going to be all right. It always seems to, everything works itself out. And no matter how bad you think things are, and whether it's in this industry or whether it's life, right? I mean, I went through so much. 5 operations. My mother passed away from COVID. My father died of cancer. I've had the 5 operations. I'm still recovering. All this stuff, and I was ready to give up. I was like, I can't take this anymore. You know what? I'm done. Like, every time I get a surgery, then I have to go back in for another surgery and another surgery. I almost died. I got sepsis. It almost killed me. I had like 24 hours to live, right? And I thought to myself, am I going to be pissed about anything? If I'm dead, am I going to regret anything that I've ever done in my life? And my answer was no, because I realized that in the 30 years that I've been doing this, I've made other people, maybe I'm not happy for certain things. Maybe I'm upset, or I'm not 100%, happy with the way things turned out, but I've given other people joy in their lives. I've done these movies that people love, and I've had my name out there. And if I could go back in time to 1991, when I got out of college and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with myself, I'd tell myself to just roll with it, just take the chances, just do what you got to do, and follow, your heart, and just do it, no matter how difficult you think it is. I mean, Night of the Living Dead, it was panic mode for us. We had an idea to do something, and we never thought in a million years that they would go for it. But we'd have a little story. Hey, we talked, like I said earlier, we talked to George Romero today. How cool is that, right? It turned into a fucking career. So you just got to whether you think you're doing something wrong, or you're fucking something up, and you just want to throw your hands up in defeat, don't do it. Just roll with it. And people constantly ask me, how do I get into this business? How do I do what you do? How do I, and my advice is just do it, right? I mean, that's what I did. You roll the dice, you just hope for the best, and sometimes you fail. There's been plenty of times when a movie that I had my heart set on we didn't get, and I feel defeated. I'm like, fuck, we didn't get it. I'm pissed that somebody else got it, because that's life, man. You just roll with the punches, take life day to day, and you just got to tackle whatever life throws at you. Um, Life's too short to worry about shit you can't control. And that is kind of where my philosophy is right now. I've been in this for 32 years. I have done a lot of great movies. I've done some bad ones. I've even acted in a movie, you know, and it's really, it's hard for me to remember a lot of the things. I try to block out the bad things and just remember the fun stuff.
You guys at Synapse you've stood the test of time. You've kind of seen time pass by you, and
Mhm.
you've been moving through it like Forrest Gump, with the feather.
Yeah.
You guys,
Every
you guys have
technology, it's like we just keep going.
you and Jerry, and working with Slippy on the special features, and other people. You guys have made people aware and carried the torch and been like a chronicle or scribe, documenting these films and helping them have more new life, and that you can't ask for anything better than that, is
Yeah.
to create a life.
I've made my mark in the industry. I've done things. I've set a precedent. I helped bring horror movies to home video that people love. And I did something. I'm just glad that I'm doing what I'm doing. And I would tell myself 30 years ago just to roll with it. Just do what your heart is set to do. Make that, take 7 years to fucking put out Suspiria. Don't listen to the people who are like, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Do it. Do it on your own time. Make sure it's right. Don't listen to the haters. Don't listen to the critics. Just you do you the way you want to do you, and don't listen to anybody else.
Oh yeah, and to quote Ferris Bueller, if you don't stop and look around once in a while,
You'll miss
you
it,
could
right? Exactly.
you'll miss this thing called life. You have given so much joy to so many of us over the
Thank you.
years, and been behind the scenes as the wizard pulling. People haven't even known that this was you that have done a lot of this stuff. So,
Yeah.
on behalf of the fan base, we thank you, sir.
Thank you, and I'm glad we finally were able to pull this off. And if you want me back anytime, just give me a call.
Absolutely. Well, everybody, this has been TTFT. This is Royce Freeman and Mr. Don May, and we're signing off. And till next time, that's the fucking trailer.